Okay, so I'm sure you all remember the original PlayStation that came out. So today we're going to take a look at the Sony PlayStation Classic. Oh, not that one. This one. Okay, so you've probably seen there's a lot of articles and videos out right now that really aren't that positive about the Sony PlayStation Classic, and a lot of people were canceling their orders, even when they just first announced the 20 games that were included on this. But I didn't want to cancel my order. I wanted to give Sony the benefit of the doubt and try it out for myself, because you know, sometimes with reviews, one person will love it and another person will hate it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this PlayStation Classic and see, is it really that bad? And is it worth $100? Okay, so I pre-ordered this back on September 20th, and I just got this in the mail today. So now let's do a quick unboxing of the PlayStation Classic. So you can see here on the front, the USB AC adapter is not included, which isn't a big deal because I'm sure I've got several of those just laying around. And as you can see, the box looks very similar to the original PlayStation. Obviously, if you're familiar with the Nintendo Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic, this is going to be very comparable to those. So you can see these next to each other. The box is a little bit bigger for the PlayStation Classic. In case you were wondering, this does come with two controllers, a USB cable, and an HDMI cable. And the 20 classic games that are preloaded are Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, Grand Theft Auto, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, Rayman, Resident Evil Director's Cut, Revelations, Persona, Ridge Racer Type 4, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, Twisted Metal, and Wild Arms. So let's go ahead and open it up and see what we've got. Okay, we just got a plain white box here with the PlayStation logo. So we've got an old school looking manual here, which is actually pretty clever. This actually looks like something that would have came with the original PlayStation. And you can see here, if you're looking for a USB charging brick, it supports 5 volt 1.0 amp. And you can see it's got a nice little cutout so you can see just how small this PlayStation Classic is. Here's your micro USB charging cable, which is about 5 feet long. And here's your included HDMI cable, which is a little over 6 feet long. And it does include two controllers, which actually feel really nice. They actually look identical to the original controllers. And you can see it even looks like the same kind of attachment as the original controllers. Except of course, this is a USB connection. The cable length on the controller is roughly 5 feet, but the nice thing is, since this is USB, you could always just get an extension, which is what I did for my Nintendo Classic. And so here is the console itself, which looks almost identical to the original PlayStation, even down to the open, power, and reset buttons. Now, where the disc would actually go doesn't actually open, but it wouldn't surprise me if people started modifying these to where that actually opens. It even has the cover on the one side, but unfortunately it doesn't open. And then of course you have the HDMI port and where you plug in the micro USB charging cable. So here on the right is an original controller from the PlayStation 1, and on the left is the controller for the PlayStation Classic. You can see everything's pretty much identical, even the weight, and really the only difference I can see is the cord on the original is a little bit thicker and it's about 2 feet longer. And same thing on the back, it's almost identical. The only difference is the original was made in Malaysia and the new one is made in China. And here's a quick size comparison. You can see how this compares to the original. It is about 50% smaller. And here's just comparing it to the Super Nintendo Classic and the Nintendo Classic. They're all similar in size. The NES Classic is just a little bit taller or thicker than the other two. But what I think is interesting is look how close in size these two are. The original PlayStation 1 Mini versus the PlayStation Classic. Could you imagine if they just made this a little bit bigger? And you could have had a full functioning one to put discs in. Okay, so now that we've got most of the basic stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and hook this up and start playing some games. And while we're at it, why don't I hook up my PlayStation 3 controller just to see if it works. Okay, so I'm liking the startup sound, just like the original. Okay, so let's go ahead and go with English. Console button guide. Here just shows you what the buttons do. And the open button actually will change the virtual disk during gameplay. So first off, I'm sure a lot of you have seen people complaining about what games are on this system. But personally, I only play a few games on the Nintendo Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic. Okay, so I noticed right away the play button, it definitely has that feel of the original PlayStation. And you can see here is sort of an old school carousel look of all the games. Then as you go down, you've got settings. So it looks like you got a screensaver you can turn on. Quite a few different languages. You've got power save settings, restore default settings, initialize console, and legal notice. Ah yes, good old memory cards.
Round 1. Fight!
First off, it seems like these guys move a little bit slower than I remember. Now, the funny thing about keying is you can pretty much just kick the whole time and you're gonna win.
You win.
Okay, so it looks like all you have to do is hit reset. Then you can just continue on down at the resume point.
Borders!
Okay, so the graphics on this game seem a little bit lower resolution than I remember. Here's a quick clip of Metal Gear Solid and also Resident Evil Director's Cut. Keep in mind that for whatever reason when I recorded this, it was even smaller than this. Maybe it was something to do with the 720p instead of 1080p, but this still will give you a good idea of what the games look like.
What is that?
I'll go and check.
Okay, Jill and I will stay in the hall in case of an emergency.
Chris? Take care.
Okay, bad news is, even though my PS3 controller fits the PlayStation Classic because it's USB, the only thing that would actually work is the analog stick, but I couldn't get any of the other buttons to work, which is a bummer. I was really hoping this would work on it. But hey, I figured I would try anyways. Okay, so now that I've played some of these games, let me first say that the build quality on this PlayStation Classic is probably just as good as the Nintendo Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic. Maybe even just a little bit better since they went to the trouble to make it look like the controller port. And then when it comes to the software, the home screen looks really good. The PlayStation startup screen looks really high quality. everything seems pretty good until you get into the games. To me, it seems like they're a little bit on the low resolution side. So then I started to think, were games that I played back in the day really this low resolution? So I went ahead and tested a few games on the original PlayStation just to compare. And I gotta tell you the truth, these don't really look that good. One thing I noticed on the PlayStation Classic is there's little artifacts on the text and some of the graphics, which you can probably see from some of the game footage I'm showing you. But you know, when I went back to the original PlayStation and put the actual discs in, I don't think it was much better. Now the artifacts were gone, but to me it just looked like the text was blurry and the graphics in the game seemed pretty blurry as well. I think one of the problems is that the original PlayStation came out when they were just starting to do 3D games. And now I think I'm so used to, games on my Xbox or PlayStation that look so more realistic, and it's just so much higher quality that when you go back to something like the PlayStation and compare it to today's games, the difference is gonna be pretty drastic. So I guess you have to ask yourself, is the PlayStation Classic worth $100 to you? Because technically you can't buy a PlayStation 1 with 2 controllers, buy all the games that are on this system, plus buy an HDMI adapter. It's gonna be over $100. If you just look up the Persona game alone on eBay, that's like half your cost right there. So yes, it is worth $100, but would I recommend this over something like a Nintendo Classic or Super Nintendo Classic? Probably not. Because more people are going to be familiar with the games that are on the Nintendo systems over this PlayStation system. But hey, if you don't mind a little bit fuzzy graphics and you grew up with the PlayStation like me, or if you're a game collector and you just want to buy this to sit on your shelf, then yeah, I would recommend this. But if you're looking for something with better graphics in the games, then you probably want to go with the Super Nintendo Classic. Don't forget to subscribe and give a thumbs up if you haven't already. This is Brian from Fishbee Productions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.